It's February 7th, 2022, and this is a regular meeting of the Moscow City Council. Would you all rise and join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first up is the consent agenda, and before we do anything with that, by way of explanation for people who always wonder what the consent agenda is all about, these are items that are either very routine or apt to be non-controversial. They've been vetted through both the Public Works and Finance Committee and or the Administrative Committee before they arrive here on the consent agenda, and any member of the council can pull any one item or items off of the consent agenda for full consideration by the full council if they need to.
Your Honor, I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion and second from Gina and Sandra. Let's see what we're going to do. Julia.
Aye.
Gina.
Aye.
Sandra.
Aye.
Haley.
Aye.
Ann.
Aye.
And the consent agenda is done. Next up is the regular agenda. Anything for staff recognition?
Not this evening. We did have one previously planned, but due to an illness, we will postpone that to our next council meeting.
Pesky illnesses. The mayor has no appointments tonight. And now on item 4, as we blaze through things, it's time for public comment in the mayor's response period. Anything that is not before the council on the agenda tonight or pending before planning and zoning or the Board of Adjustment, please come up to the microphone, state your name, where you're from, and tell us what's on your mind.
Mayor Bedke, members of the City Council, good evening. My name is Jake Geringer. I serve as the North Idaho Policy Advisor in the Executive Office of the Governor. I appreciate the mayor's invitation for me to visit you tonight and introduce myself. My role is to be a local contact for you all to the governor's office, to the state, to help answer any questions you may have, and to be a resource for you in any way I can. So I encourage you to reach out to me and share your thoughts, especially as the legislative session progresses here. Thank you.
Thanks, Jake.
Yeah, awesome.
Jake, you're based in Post Falls, right?
Okay, next up is, well, anybody else want to comment before I go racing off to the next item? Okay, seeing nobody else, next up is the Citizen Commission report from the Moscow Arts Commission, Megan Cherry and Lauren McCleary.
Mayor and members of City Council, thank you so much for the opportunity tonight. It's really a pleasure for me to work with the Moscow Arts Commission. This is a large commission. It's 12 members, and they are all passionate. They're all experts in their field. They are all dedicated to the Moscow community. It's a really beautiful space to be in and to share with these folks. So I'll turn it over to our Arts Commission Chair, Lauren McCleary. Lauren is, where do I even start? Lauren is an artist. She currently has work up at the 1912 Center that she's made collaboratively with her husband and her kids. And so I encourage you to go and see that. It's really beautiful. So Lauren is an artist. Lauren's an educator. She teaches arts education and art, survey of art, Art 100 up at the university. She's been here in the Moscow community for many years. Over a decade, more than 10 years. She's in double digits. In any case, she's been on the Arts Commission for another probably 6 years now, and has done some really, really wonderful things with the MAC. So I'd like to turn the podium over to her. This is our clicker.
Easy. All right. Thank you, Mayor Becky and members of the City Council and community members. It's really fun to be able to share with you what the MAC has been up to over the past year. I've got my notes and my clicker. Okay, here we go. So our current roster includes the names on the screen: Cindy Barhart, Catherine Bonzo, Catherine Clancy, Sue Clark, Sonia Ford, Aaron Johnson, Sandra Stoops, Erica Wagner, Diane Walker, David Wilson, and Donna Woolston. And it's a mixture of members of the U of I current faculty, retired faculty, educators, members of local businesses, and local art scene, et cetera. So it's a really fun group to be a part of. And we welcome Maureen Laughlin as the City Council liaison this term. And it's our pleasure to work with Megan and now Amy. They run a really good ship and help us achieve a lot. So one of the things that we track as a commission is the volunteer hours. And so 2020 obviously was impacted by the pandemic. So a lot less programming was able to happen. There were still 189.5 total hours of MAC member volunteering and community member volunteer hours. And then 2021 is a more accurate picture of a typical year with the more programming. So then it was a total of 312 hours. So we have very committed members on the commission to achieve all of the things that we see as beneficial to the Moscow arts ecosystem. So also we were able to roll out the new style guide, all of our fun graphics for our different programs designed by Appearances, Marketing, and Promotion. So each of our programs has its own unique logo, but they're connected visually, and then they will continue to be refined every year to make sure that they're maintain a contemporary appearance. I have a note to say they make great stickers. If you don't already have one, they're really good stickers. One of my favorite projects that I get to be involved in, or the subcommittees that I'm involved with, is the Arts and Culture Education Committee. So we really focus on bringing accessible education opportunities to our programming. And then when we don't often build new programs, but with the pandemic, we put into play the Activities Toolbox, which is a curriculum of lesson plans and supplies in a really cute box that is free to participants who register for them. And so the lessons are then housed on the website, so anyone can access the curriculum. The supplies are specific to when the toolbox is rolled out. So we've done 3 of these toolboxes since the first one, and looking forward to doing 2 more this year. Yep. And it's also a great way to not only provide art opportunities for families and anyone who wants to partake, but we're paying educators to write the curriculum and develop that part too. And Plus Plein Air is one part of our programming that has really taken off. If you look at the numbers, in 2019 we had 36 artists, 2020 34, a little bit impacted by the pandemic, and then in 2021 we had 53 artists. So it's really gaining in popularity and impact, and it's a collaborative effort with the U of I and the city, and it just draws a lot of people to our beautiful region to participate in into the competition and the exhibition. Art Walk is one of our biggest programs, and then we expanded it, but it's been a fun way to kind of draw out the energy that happens at the June Art Walk. So now we have third Thursdays happening October through June. And then in June will be kind of the typical, the celebration we're used to, where we have the street fair, the music, the food, the exhibits, all of that. And then in 2022, we're introducing Kid Walk to kind of draw in that family energy that happens at Moscow at the Art Walk. So we know that it's a popular event for all ages, and we just want to make sure we provide some specific activities and programs for the kids there. So specific Kid Walk is going to be introduced this June. In public art, we had the Homecoming installed in July 2020 at the Sea and Main Couplet by artists Jennifer Corio and David Fry. And it's been nice to have that there as a welcoming into town from that direction and activating that space. In 2022, we will be adding the Andrew Becker Memorial Sculpture. And then some of the more annual projects like vinyl wrap traffic boxes, the annual open call for the ITC Sculpture Garden, and the Arts Department will be supporting public works in new storm drain murals. Okay, and 3rd Street Gallery has been busy as ever, and we even added a new gallery, the mini gallery down by Megan's office, the box gallery, which is beautifully crafted by someone special, which has been a fun place to just add to what happens already in the 3rd Street Gallery. And it's a little bit playful and fun to just see what we can activate in a very tiny space, as well as in the upper levels in the hallways. So we had a full exhibition calendar with jazz hands, and then Connections, which was a middle school art show. We also have middle school art down below, and I always love when we get to interact with the schools that way. Dear Moscow was a community invite to mail art exhibition that happened to line up perfectly with the pandemic. Silver and Gold, Control Alt P. So all of these these exhibits span between invites or juried or regional calls, national, international. So we have a variety of the kinds of exhibits that are shown in City Hall. What to watch for in 2022. Extra effort in MAC outreach, just making sure that when we can get out there, we're really highlighting our programs and interacting with community members, not just planning things, but being at the events and enjoying the offerings and encouraging participation at the programs, such as Third Thursday Art Walk. As I mentioned, the Becker Memorial Sculpture will be coming this year, and we'll have the Mayor's Arts Awards this year, which is a fun time. And I'm very excited that we will have our new Poet Laureate taking her first year at the throne. The Poet Laureate program increases awareness of the role that poetry and literature play in the community and creates a record of Moscow's distinctive character. Not only does the program support the work of excellent poets in the city, but it also invests the public spaces of the city with the beauty of language. And that's what we were about to do. So thank you for giving your attention now to our current Poet Laureate, Stacey Bowe Miller. I don't know if you'll need this, but I'll just set it again.
Thank you, Lauren and Megan. Hello, Mayor, City Council, and community members. I'm going to read a poem that I wrote, and you want to take it? Okay. The sun has been shining in the last couple days, and I've noticed some new birds coming around. And so in honor of those birds, I'm going to read a poem called Meadowlark. Meadowlark. What magic does a teenage boy use to arrange his lips into perfect bird song? My brother, the only person who could recreate the sweet trill we listened for each spring. A bird in the waving grass, carrying my childhood in a rise and fall of song I don't know how to whistle. How does a pasture of trees, a pond of bluegill, a whole train track fit in a brief feathered body? My father carried songs in him and rolled them out for me on long drives. Old ballads that made me know something other kids my age didn't know. I still carry them around with me, whisper them in my children's rooms at night. This meadowlark tattooed on my arm, so I can't change my mind about the birds I love. I lay still for the pain and let that bird become a part of me. I would like to be a bird, but without forgetting my father or the way when we walked through a field, my brother put his hand out to stop me, said, "Listen," and we waited, watching each other's face for the music. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, we got to the end without the usual slide that says questions. No, but I was on the Arts Commission as liaison a couple of years ago, and what a hard-working bunch of people are there, and so professional and so forward-looking with providing education, access to art, activities all around town. It really makes Moscow a more special place altogether. And I know we all appreciate that. And I appreciate our special treat tonight, having a reading from our poet laureate. So thank you for that too. So comments, questions, Gina?
I would not be upset if she showed up more often.
Yeah.
Just read us another one. That was really nice. That was such a hopeful moment with, the white stuff still outside.
I just want to say I'm just so proud of the Arts Commission and all the things that you do in Moscow. It's amazing to have so many different opportunities for arts education and artists of all kinds in our community. And it's just a great place. It's a great addition to Moscow. And I'm especially excited that my friend Stacey is here and she's our poet laureate. And it was wonderful to hear your poem. Thank you.
I had a quick question. I also was going to say I was around when Mac Choir was still a thing, and it was my way to make friends with kids at other elementary schools, and I love it and I miss it dearly. I was going to ask, how has the utilization been from activities? Has it, held steady? Do you need more promoters? Like, how's it been going?
Like the free boxes, they get snatched up.
I love to hear that. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for all your support too.
Okay, next up, we have consideration of an amendment to Title 11, Chapter 2 of the Moscow City Code. Cody Riddle will present. After Cody presents, the council can ask questions. We'll have public input if anybody wishes to weigh in on this one, and then go back to council discussion. So, Cody, take it away. Dazzle us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Unfortunately, right out of the gate, I don't have a poem, so that's a pretty hard act to follow. But it was beautiful. So I'm here to present an amendment to Title 11, Chapter 2 of City Code. As you know, we have received a few comments that were included in your packet this evening. I do want to emphasize that nothing in this proposal introduces regulations that aren't applicable to cyclists, but what it does do is clarify that those regulations, most importantly, will apply to other electronic devices, the e-bikes, the e-scooters, e-boards, things like that. That's really the primary impetus, is that growing interest of deployment of these electric assist devices by commercial businesses. We've had interest, actually, a couple scooter providers, bicycle providers, that are looking to deploy devices in the city and on the university's campus. So we're trying to get ahead of that. There's also clearly an increasing number of devices operated by individuals. So our intent is definitely not to prohibit the use of those devices at all, or to unnecessarily regulate the use or the laws that apply to traditional cyclists. All of those provide a very important form of transportation that is certainly a great alternative to the use of the automobile. There's clearly all kinds of environmental benefits if we can create opportunities to keep our cars parked when appropriate. So the key element of this amendment, again, is to support these devices, but it can't be at the detriment of other users of the right-of-way, specifically the pedestrians on our sidewalks. In the most basic sense, it does put these electric devices kind of on the same playing field as traditional cyclists. And that's really what we're trying to do in this code. It really does respond to some of the new technology that we're seeing. So a lot of work, as many of you know, has already been done on this amendment well before my time. My predecessor, Bill, with others, led an effort that included a review of other codes and practices in other communities, including Boise, which I joined you from here very recently, where they've seen deployment of a lot of these commercial devices and some of the challenges that presents. That work that involved, again, review of code, practices, and regulations in those communities resulted in a draft ordinance that was presented to the Transportation Commission, Pathways Commission, and then the Administrative Committee last year, and then with minor modifications again in January of this year. The committee did recommend approval back in July of last year, and then subsequently approval of the modified ordinance in January of this year. But because of some of the back and forth that was occurring with the mobility providers, the actual amendment was never brought before the full council for consideration. And so that's why we're here this evening. We have, from those conversations, since modified the code slightly and refined a license agreement that would apply to those shared mobility providers looking to deploy devices in the city. Again, we presented those changes to the Administrative Committee back in January, and they did support the proposal. With that, I would like to walk you just briefly through the highlights of the amendment. And I will briefly just touch on the license agreement, because while that's not before you this evening, it does interplay closely with the code to appropriately regulate and then allow those devices. So the code itself, we are effectively asking or recommending that you replace Title 11, Chapter 2 of City Code. It was adopted back in 1991. So at 30-something years old, it referenced an old pathway map that probably no longer belongs in code and is certainly not as effective in regulating or making it clear that we support some of these alternative forms of transportation. Again, we are effectively looking to replace that entire chapter. And again, to address changes in transportation that have occurred since the 90s, and more specifically, the use of bicycles and all of these different electronic assist devices. So a complete Word version of the code was presented to the committee and is included in your packet this evening. I won't bore you with reading the entire code back to you in its entirety, but would like to touch on some of the key highlights. It establishes definitions for devices and facilities. It specifies a number of operating standards, including speed limits. It provides standards for things like parking, storage, maintenance of these devices. And then it also clarifies the city's ability to address abandoned devices, and most notably that all of the provisions address use on roadways, sidewalks, and our non-motorized pathways. As I mentioned, this effort did pause late last summer, and that was largely due to safety concerns. Some of these devices are getting quite heavy and can operate at significant speeds. While we certainly want to support their use, we also need to ensure the users of our sidewalks. This is especially important in the downtown area. The original draft contemplated or suggested a speed limit in the downtown area of 6 miles an hour. But again, that's still significantly faster than the typical pedestrian walking the sidewalks, and certainly creates all kinds of opportunity for conflict between users. So to address this amendment before you this evening suggests a dismount zone. The code would prohibit the use of all electric devices, e-assist devices on the sidewalks in this area you can see on the screen. These users can still operate on the adjacent streets, and outside of this area, they can still operate on the sidewalks. Those areas outside of the downtown certainly don't see the same concentration of the slow-moving pedestrians that you see in the downtown core. And then from an enforcement perspective, it's much easier to enforce that regulation than a speed limit that varies around town. Someone's either riding on the sidewalk or they're not.
Right.
As I mentioned at the beginning, we have received public correspondence. I would also note that while we haven't received formal comment, representatives from the University of Idaho have indicated their support for the amendment and these devices. I believe they'll also be supporting the deployment of those devices on their campus. Shared conversations with some of the shared mobility providers have been supportive of the approach with the dismount zone as opposed to the speed limit we originally contemplated. Now, we did receive a letter expressing concerns with the ordinance on Friday, and I believe you all should have been provided a copy from an email from Mr. Philip Cook. In short, he appears to believe there might be too much ambiguity in some of the code language and suggests potential conflicts with Idaho state code. We definitely acknowledge some of these sections aren't exactly black and white. Things like inattentive, reckless operation really do depend on the situation and the setting. It's not any different, though, than regulations that apply to automobile use or cyclists today, traditional cyclists. This simply creates a mechanism or ability for our officers to maintain public safety and to clarify that the applicability of this ordinance also applies to the scooters, e-boards, and things like that. The state code that was revised recently didn't address those other devices beyond the e-bikes at all. So before we wrap up, I do, though, want to briefly mention the license agreement. Companies looking to deploy these devices on a commercial level will be required to enter into an annual license agreement with the city. We're still working through the final details of those agreements with our peers in legal, police, and streets, but they will include some very important provisions. We'll have a local contact that's available 24 hours a day. It'll establish a reporting structure back to the city that will provide us important updates on use patterns, maintenance of equipment, and things like that. It will also allow us the opportunity to reinforce the key requirements of our own code and require that be conveyed to the users of these devices. And again, these agreements will be renewed annually. I think it's important, as this is a new endeavor for us, that we'll have the opportunity to revisit those agreements on an annual basis and make adjustments as needed. So again, just for clarity, we aren't asking you to take action on an agreement this evening. Simply wanted to provide the highlights of how that will work in conjunction with the proposed code amendment. I believe that wraps up my presentation. Again, we are recommending approval of this amendment this evening under the suspension of the rules requiring separate readings. If there were things you wanted to adjust, we could certainly make modifications and bring those back through the reading process. And then finally, I would like to briefly mention that the dismount zone provision as proposed would be effective June 1st. The intent there is to allow us time for our streets team to design, manufacture, and then install the appropriate signs. Thank you.
Okay, questions for Cody? Sandra?
Just a couple. I wanted to also say thanks for redoing a lot of this. I had some really big concerns about the dismount zone and whether we'd have bicycles running amok in farmers market and whatnot. So I think this is a really great step and I appreciate that. One thing that I had thought about late after the admin meeting was what does this do to electronic wheelchairs? How is that dealt with? And is there a code modification we need to make for that?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Kelly, by definition, we don't include wheelchairs. It talks about the e-assist scooters, the bicycles, the e-boards. So
it's not roped into all of that. Okay.
No.
That's great. Thank you.
I had a bunch of questions and I bothered everybody this week with lots of clarification on this ordinance. But I think I finally understand a couple of things. One was what Sandra said. I just wanted to make it clear because I have gotten questions that this does not apply to assistive devices for people with disabilities, not those kind of scooters, not electric wheelchairs, all that stuff. So I think we are clear on that. Also, let's see. I wanted to ask how the city's planning to educate people on the new dismount zone.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Parker, We could certainly use, I mean, through social media mechanisms, press releases, there are all kinds of opportunities, I think, to educate the public. And then certainly this isn't something where we're going to want to be heavy-handed. I mean, if we see violations or conflicts, I think there's certainly an opportunity for our officers to stop and talk to people, especially around some of these more, crowded events like the market, where people can observe that communication occurring and get the word out.
Okay. And as a cyclist myself, I would suggest that we have maybe 2 phases of education, one in June and then a second phase when we have new students come back, because sometimes when we roll out an educational piece maybe in the summer, then we have a whole new group of cyclists that come in, and it's really important to make sure that they know what's safe too. The other thing I just wanted to clarify is I had a lot of questions about the reckless operation of a bicycle being a misdemeanor, because I thought that was really subjective. But Mia answered a lot of questions for me, and I appreciate that. And I just wanted to make it clear that even if we took that provision out, the state law already has that in it. So it wouldn't really do anything to take that out of the ordinance. And if we want to take that out of the ordinance, then we should talk to the state. So those are my questions and comments.
I have a question. And it just occurred to me based on the old, I'm guessing the 91 map. And I'm trying to remember, I grew up over near where Good Samaritan is. And I mean, the scooters are out there already. I appreciate that we're trying to be proactive and working with people pursuing this sort of agreement with the city to provide the service. But I am curious, I can't remember if there's posted signs on the stretch of Latah Trail from Mountain View Park around towards, I think it's Eisenhower by, and so I'm trying to remember. I mean, that makes me a little nervous. I know that if we wanted to do some additional posting to exclude scooters from that area, I don't know if that's a different conversation as far as prohibiting that specific area for dismount, or if that's something we want to talk specifically with Good Samaritan about. But makes me nervous. We got some slow strollers over there, and I want to make sure they're comfortable. So I don't know what it would look like to focus in on that particular area, and if that needs to be a separate conversation.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Lewis, as it's written now, the only dismount zone that's proposed
Main Street,
is the
either side.
downtown core. We could certainly observe how that works, and if we needed to amend the code further at a later date based on use activities, we could certainly explore that with you.
Ruby. And they may even have something posted. I'm trying to remember what's over there.
I don't remember anything.
It's probably posted just as non-motorized pathway, no motor vehicles, but they, e-bikes technically are exempted as being motor vehicles underneath state law. Scooters, state law just doesn't address. So under this provision, they would be allowed to utilize that.
Okay.
I don't know that we'd see we would expect to see the highest concentration on campus and between campus and downtown.
I would agree.
And maybe the pathway systems around campus. I think that far in the east side of town, I doubt we see a high concentration use. And like Cody mentioned, if we can monitor that and decide if any future modifications would be warranted.
Sounds good.
Gina.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Will you, and this is not a softball question as much as it seems, will you come back to us at the end of the year and let us know, how things have worked, and if the dismount zone has caused all kinds of agony, or if it's perfect, and if we do need to add, is that in the plan already?
It is now. I certainly, that's perfectly acceptable and probably an excellent idea with something so new like this.
I think it'd be good. Thank you.
Sandra.
And to tag onto that, I think part of it too is I can't help but wonder how our pathways are going to look with the increasing number, not just of companies coming in, but just the increasing number of individuals having e-bikes and e-scooters, and that they're fun, but they're also fast, and the pathways aren't always for fast people. So how is that going to be monitored, and how can we keep people feeling safe that aren't on those high-speed vehicles on the pathways?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Kelly, it does include a provision for 15 mile an hour speed limit on those non-motorized pathways, and then it's largely complaint complaint driven, and we would need to enforce that if we saw a big spike in those activities.
So and by doing that, I mean, do we have police on their bikes out there on the pathways? Because I mean, it's not really, my speed limit isn't super enforced happily between here and Pullman, right? I have a hard time believing it's gonna be really enforced on a pathway out on Lake Dot Trail, you know? And so I just want to make sure that the folks that are out also walking their dogs or looking at flowers or whatever are also going to feel safe to be out there, because it is for everyone.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Kelly, we would certainly require or lean on them to report back to us. And if we saw an increase in complaints and that kind of activity, we would need to patrol it more
Thank you.
closely.
Well, maybe the police would like to have a nice ride on the Paradise Path every now and again instead of on the streets. So they do have bikes and
Yeah.
can be out there.
I had a comment and a question, and I appreciate Gina bringing up the kind of periodic review, because in my mind, I see this functioning like the ADU code has for P&Z, where it was passed and was pretty stringent, and then was revisited and loosened and then kind of assessed on an ongoing basis. So I really like the idea that we would look at this again. So I also appreciate you answering some of the questions that we had from the communication that we received. I had one follow-up from that I couldn't answer, and so I was hoping to ask tonight. I don't recall why we decided misdemeanor versus infraction.
Mr. Mayor, council members of all of that really mirrors state law that recognizes, inattentive, careless driving as a misdemeanor.
Gotcha. Okay. And then I had one other thing. So looking at section 2-4D, which is the section that talks about someone moving to the far right of the lane when the situation calls for it, I would love to add a slight language adjustment to that if people were amenable to it, that would just say to move as far to the right of the traveled roadway, basically as safely far right as they could. So as opposed to just as far right
As you want.
Yeah.
So the way it reads, Your Honor,
Yeah.
if I might just read that section. I'm
jump in
sorry,
there.
I didn't mean to jump in there.
Where's the
I waited
gavel?
to be recognized. So that section as it reads states, the operator of a bicycle, e-bike, e-scooter, e-board traveling at a rate of speed that delays a vehicle or vehicles following the same lane shall be required, when it is unlawful or unsafe for the following vehicle to pass, to move as far to the right of the traveled roadway, or to the left where the bike, e-bike, e-scooter, e-board is on the left lane of the one-way road, as is safe under the conditions then existing. So it does say they are to move to the right as safe as it is under those conditions that exist. So there's just a lot of commas that break that up, where it's safe where it's unsafe for a vehicle to pass them, or we're on a one-side road. So it really does read to move as far right of the traveled roadway as is safe under the conditions then existing, if you take some of those other qualifiers out.
That's a good clarification, because as I'm reading it, it feels like it's talking about the left lane as it comes after that.
Correct. And that was just a clarifying of, you honestly don't have to move if it's safe for the vehicle to pass you. You can stay in the lane. If it's unsafe or the vehicle cannot pass you due to roadway controls, then you need to move over as far as is safe under the conditions. But it's confusing the way it's structured there, because it's trying to address if it's safe for a vehicle to pass you, or if you're on a one-way and you may be on the left side of the road, just to clarify those two conditions.
Kind of like going back to junior high school with sentence diagrams, where you clip off all the comma bits and chuck it and then see what the sentence reads. Grammar 101.
People don't actually do that anymore.
I know it. And they're luckier and happier for it, I guarantee you.
And that,
I guess I would still maybe like to see that finesse a little bit personally, but it does say it's a little hard to interpret.
It kind of works for me, but
can I ask one favor of Mr. Belknap?
Sure.
When I read it, it seems fine. Can you read it without saying the commas?
Okay.
This is like a poem. Think of it as a poem.
So we'll skip the first part. The delays of vehicle or vehicles following the same lane shall be required when it is unlawful or without the commas, it doesn't make as much logical sense.
Well, and so I guess maybe then while I'm always for not changing what we have, if someone is reading it out loud to somebody or looking at it, and I mean, do we need to put a period in somewhere and have a new sentence to make it more clear? I mean, I was fine when I read it, but if other people are unclear of how that is, that makes me a little nervous.
I don't know. I think, and I understand I come from a diagramming background too, Mr. Mayor, but I think that if we get to that part in the code, in real life, and somebody was arguing on which side they were going to pass and it wasn't safe to get over, that's a little tooth and nail.
Sure.
I mean, I think there is an like almost a culture of getting out of the way. Somebody will yell left at me when I'm on the path and I don't know what I'm doing, but I'll go left. So I think there's already kind of that understanding that you get over as far as you can safely, one way or the other. So I don't know that I think it's imperative. Maybe we do it like this for a year, and if we find out that there was a confusion about which side to get over to, or maybe then we need to do it. But to me, it's a syntax more than anything.
Mia, what is the law? Does the law recognize commas?
Yes. The law does recognize the commas.
So it reads okay by way of ordinance.
Yes. To me, it seems like an easy change that makes it more accessible to a layperson.
So,
Somebody
well, I'm
reading
not
it.
sure what layperson is ever going to sit down
Yeah.
and read the ordinance language. The only time they're going to read it is if they've been issued a citation for some reason, and then they're going to read it. But otherwise, I suspect everybody's just going to follow the usual rules of the road. How many bicyclists out there read something that is almost exactly the same language for riding a bike around?
I guess I see Anne's point, because I do think that people who are bikers I'm thinking we're catering to a different audience of people than our normal biking or e-biking crowd in town, and their level of understanding of, I guess, intuitive rules of the road. So I hear what Anne's saying. I'm reading it to myself one more time. Hang on.
I guess I don't find it that compelling to say we shouldn't make it easy to read because no one's going to read it, which is how I hear that rationale.
Well, actually, right now, while we're rereading down at the end, maybe if anybody in the public has a comment they'd like to come up and share with us, any perspectives you'd like to put into the fray, just pop on up, shove Cody out of the way.
I just want to clarify that I had to diagram sentences. I was just.
Okay, how's it going down there, Haley?
Well, the screen just went black.
Oh.
Hang on.
No, I still there. It is a lot of commas. I don't have a better suggested edit, and I mean, if Anne and I were to take some homework and try to workshop this section D together and work with staff for an amendment to the amendment, would that be the way to go? I don't have a quick fix in my mind. I agree with Anne that it's not easy to digest. I also agree with Anne that it doesn't make sense to not change it for the better, even if no one's reading it except for us. So I'm comfortable passing it as is, but if we were to discuss further would you be comfortable with that, Anne? And would that be an avenue for us to?
Well, you can't pass it and then discuss
No,
it later.
you can't.
So you can,
Mhm.
we could pass it now, wait and see how things work out, come back and visit it later, or we can pass it on a first reading now, possibly rework it, bring it back for a second reading and go from there.
I just don't have an intuitive fix, but now that I'm looking at it again, I don't.
Yeah, correct, Your Honor. So the proper action, if the council wished to revise that language, and I'm always hesitant to try to wordsmith a section of code in the middle of a council meeting and
What?
unintended consequences of
I hear ya.
actions of what you actually end up with. I mean, to staff, to the city attorney, the section works. It is qualifying to say that you don't have to move over if it's safe for the vehicle to pass you. And if you're on a one-way roadway, you can be over on the left-hand side. And you only have to move over as far as safe under the conditions that are existing.
Fair.
To us, it works. If the council would like to see revisions, then we would request that you pass it under first reading, provide staff with direction of the revisions you would like to see. We don't think it's necessary in its current construction, but that certainly is up to the council.
Sandra?
I mean, looking at this again, I mean, honestly, it does say, move as far to the right of travel roadway or to the left of where the bicycle, e-bike, scooter is as safely possible. I mean, it does say it there. So I think even to a layperson reading this, I mean, it's always jumbled up because you always have a bunch in there. I don't feel that going through and doing a second reading to change a couple words will make this any more clear.
I'm not sure there's a better option as it's described.
I think it's going to be a little jumbled regardless, and it does state it right there.
I also can't tell how much of it is staring, like when you stare at a word too long and then it looks like it's spelled wrong.
No.
So I,
Move as far to the right of the travel roadway.
Would it be possible to make a motion to approve the ordinance with minor modifications for clarity to that section? We'd have to do
No,
first reading.
you have to state on the record what the modifications are so the public understands the ordinance
Fair,
is being
okay.
passed. So we'd have to have a language, which is why first reading and then amendment bringing back a modified ordinance for second reading is the path. If it's a single word, if we can coherently say it's striking section D or it's adding and or something simple, that can be recorded on the record. That can be made as a final. But given that we don't have actually a clear alternative, then it'd be something we need to work on developing to see if there is an option for something that's more clear. I just don't have that available for you this evening.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, council. Gina?
I move that we approve the ordinance under suspension of the rules requiring 3 complete and separate readings, and that it be read by title and published by summary.
Second.
And a second from Sandra. Any further discussion? Okay. Voting. Anne?
Name?
Haley?
I,
Gina?
Aye.
Julia?
Aye.
And Sandra?
Aye.
Okay, 4-1, it passes. So now we have an ordinance number 4, 2022-04. An ordinance of the City of Moscow, Idaho, a municipal corporation of the state of Idaho, providing for the amendment of Moscow City Code Title 11, Chapter 2, relating to walkways and bike paths, providing for the regulation of electronic power-assisted bicycles, scooters, and boards, providing for the regulation of shared mobility programs, providing that the provisions of this ordinance be deemed severable, and providing for this ordinance to be in full force and effect from the date of its passage, approval, and publication according to law.
Your Honor, if you might, we also have a resolution that accompanied the ordinance that describes and adopts the map for the dismount zones. We'll need a motion to adopt the resolution as well.
That didn't make it onto the list, but
Yeah, I move that we approve the accompanying resolution.
Second.
you two are singing in concert tonight. Any discussion? Okay, Haley,
I,
Gina,
Aye.
Julia,
Aye.
Sandra,
Aye.
Ann,
Aye.
and passes 5-0 on that one. Thank you, Bill. And thank you, Cody. Well done. Next up is Emergency Radio Professional Services Agreement featuring Bill Belknap.
Featuring. Starting.
No PowerPoint presentation this evening on this item. As the council may be aware, in 2015, the council identified the city's emergency radio communication systems deficiencies as a tier 1 major challenge area. The system the city currently operates is very old and has limited coverage across the city. Actually, there are several areas, especially down south and within certain buildings in the community, where officers can't even communicate in and out of buildings and cannot communicate with dispatch. Officers currently experience 5 to 10% transmittal failure due to those dead zones throughout the patrol area. And that obviously results in delayed notifications, delayed officer response, which increase risk to the community. The city has commissioned several studies, including a needs assessment, a radio coverage assessments, as well as implementation plan and cost estimates for the project. And the current estimate is about $2.8 million. We have kind of added a 20% escalator because that estimate is a couple years old. So we're kind of projecting a total project cost potentially as high as $3.4 million on the project. That will include installation of a new simulcast system backbone. Currently, officers have to switch between different channels on their radios, depending upon what repeater they're hitting. This will be one system that will automatically select the nearest receiver to the officers, so they won't have to do that switching across. And that would also replace, hopefully, all of our existing mobile and handheld radios. We have been working on accumulating funding for this project, and we've accumulated just over $2.5 million and have some additional we'll be working on accumulating for the project, and we're ready to begin that final design and construction of the communication network. We have prepared and secured the services, at least a proposal for services from electrical engineering firm, Hatfield and Dawson Consulting Engineers, who are qualified to provide the assistance. In the scope of work will include the design of the system and selection of the radio electronics, the FCC licensing and microwave licensing that's required, cost estimation, system procurement assistance, as well as acceptance testing of the new VHF simulcast system and microwave radio interconnections. It's anticipated this will take about 24 months to complete. The professional service agreement is in the amount of $48,000. That covers all phases of the project. So staff's recommendation this evening is to approve the professional service agreement so we can advance the project forward.
Any questions, comments from council?
I had one. It's terrifying to me that our policemen would be in the middle of some event and have to choose what channel to communicate on. That's scary to me. Those are scary moments. Is this the 48,000? Is that an annual cost, or is that just the project
This
period
is a
will be
one-time
done?
expense for the entire project,
Okay.
covering everything from design to licensing to bidding and procurement assistance to installation, testing, and commissioning of the system.
Okay.
I'd add also that the fire department also uses the same system, and the same applies if you got a fireman inside of a burning house with his boot stuck through a floorboard and he can't say, "Get me out of here."
And the fire department has other challenges of additional interference and cross traffic that happens to hit their channel fairly often. So this will help address that condition as well.
Phil, can you explain more clearly what you mean by accumulated funding?
So we've appropriated funds. This is funds we've accumulated over a number of years. So oftentimes the capital accumulations come from ending fund balances over fiscal years. The city generally does not expend everything that is budgeted or appropriated for. And so those what we call unanticipated fund balance at the end of the fiscal year will end up usually getting transferred to a capital accumulation for larger one-time expenditure type projects. So this is one. The city also allocated our reimbursement underneath the CARES Act for the public safety reimbursement to this project as well. So we had about $732,000, I think it was, of CARES Act monies that we were reimbursed for public safety personnel costs. And so we moved those funds into the account. So we've just been accumulating funding in the city's accounts for this project, knowing this need was coming.
Thank you.
I have a question. I have no doubt this is needed. I'm trying to better understand how this interfaces with what we work through Whitcom with. And so is this what, can I better understand the connection between how our
So this is
radio,
how we talk to Whitcom is
Whitcom.
through this system.
and
Correct.
so Whitcom collects all these calls?
So currently there is an antenna on top of the courthouse that is our pathway to
To
Whitcom.
Whitcom, okay.
And it's actually, there's a communication between, the antenna was actually at the old police department just last week, was moved on top of City Hall.
Cool.
But the officers in the field oftentimes hit the repeater at the top of the courthouse That then comes to City Hall, and then that goes out to the fiber connection and then communicates to Whitcomb.
Okay.
So this will be the entire
This is our
communication
responsibility as a
system
city to
in
look
our
after it.
area,
Okay.
and then there will be a backup microwave connection to Whitcomb as well to provide redundancy in
Groovy.
that connection path.
Thank you.
Does this bill eliminate this item off of our major challenge area list?
Once we get it done, we'll check it off. Correct. Another one down.
That makes me want to move that we approve the proposed professional services agreement with Hatfield and Dawson Consulting Engineers.
Second. Hold on.
Okay,
I want the second.
motion and a second. Motion by Ann, second by Haley. Any other discussion? Okay, Sandra,
Aye.
Haley,
Aye.
Gina,
Aye.
Julia,
Aye.
Ann,
Aye.
and that passes another 5-0. Good stuff. It's done. And moving on, we have the Economic Development Administration 6th Street Bridge Disaster Recovery Grant Agreement. Bill Belknap again.
Thank you, Your Honor. Some more good news. The 6th Street Bridge, located just west of Mountain View Road at the Paradise Creek crossing there, has been subjected to damage during recent flooding events occurred both in 2017 and also most severely in 2019 flooding events. After that, we did apply for disaster recovery grant funding from the Economic Development Administration to assist with funding the replacement of the damaged bridge. We lost 3 or 4 feet of roadway width as it undermined on either side of the existing 3 culvert system. We did install kind of the Jersey barricades, concrete barricades, as an interim measure because our guardrails are kind of flapping in the wind after they were undermined during that flooding event. And really, it's a bottleneck along the Mountain View corridor without having bike lanes, sidewalks, pedestrian facilities. And we have our Mountain View improvement project coming up this summer as well that will be constructing the roundabout, installing those facilities just east of that location. We were successful, and on January 12th of this year, EDA announced the grant award in the amount of $955,000 for the project. And again, that will fund the replacement with a new 24-foot single span bridge. So we'll go from a 3 culvert system to actually a free span precast bridge structure, including the additional bike lane, sidewalks, and elevating that crossing by about 3 feet. So there'll be a little bit of a hump to the roadway there just to provide greater freeboard to reduce flooding upstream of that bridge structure. The city will be matching $515,000 from the city's capital accumulations for the project. And we are working hard to get that project out to bid by the end of this month. We really want to have this constructed in concert with the Mountain View improvements so we can close that area once, cause a disruption for one construction season, open it up with all the improvements completed. The documents we received from EDA indicated that we needed to sign within 30 days or they could reallocate our funding. So I signed it as quickly as I could. And the action here this evening for the council is to ratify acceptance of the grant award in the amount of $955,000 and ratifying my signature on that document. And we prepared a council resolution to formally signify the acceptance of the grant award for your passage this evening as well. I'd be happy to try to answer any other questions the council might have.
I don't have any questions, but I would like to say first that this is the first time that I've had so many people actually comment on something that was done that they're really excited about. That's like, wow, they are reading the paper and they are reading about what they're doing, because there are a lot of folks who are excited about this. And with that, I would like to move to ratify acceptance of the grant award in the amount of $955,000 and approve the associated council resolution.
Second.
Okay, have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, Julia,
Aye.
Gina,
Aye.
Ann,
Aye.
Sandra,
Aye.
and Haley.
Aye.
5-0, excellent. Okay, that takes us to the end of the agenda items. Moving into reports. Sandra, you got anything for us?
You know, I'm going to say yes because I can't remember what we did last time. So I'm just, if it's a repeat, I apologize, but they were great. So it's worth hearing twice if that's the case. I had a Human Rights Commission a while ago, but excited about what they're doing. It was nice to be back with all those folks again and see how dedicated they are. They're kind of all over the map with some projects they want right now, and I'm looking forward to see what they're going to try to bring down and focus on for the summer. And with Historic Preservation Commission, again, it was nice to be back with those folks again. And they did a recap of the Orchids Award and what they're trying to look for again in the future. And that's exciting. It's exciting to me because I love old buildings and I'm a nerd that way. I'm really excited about all that. And they are really under the radar. One of my favorite things about the Preservation Commission is they really work so much under the radar, really focus on what our areas look like and how to make them nice and what they deem is appropriate. They're walking down alleys, right? Checking out stuff just because they're interested. It's a really great thing. So it was fun to be back with them again. And if that was a repeat, I apologize.
Gina?
I'm not going to repeat myself. I was invited to attend the Planning and Zoning Commission on the 26th of January by the chair. And the item specifically was talking about the Palouse Basin aquifer and kind of throwing in some economic development and talking about the developments and things like that, but then also the transition from the executive manager that used to be there and that's gone now and kind of that progress. So we did then get way off topic and Victoria got to sit through the off topic part too. But it was a great conversation and it really is, it just, again, and I know we all feel this way and I'm not speaking for us, but I think we all have the same sentiment. We are so gobsmacked by our commissions. They are some really, really committed people and they're very smart. And it was exciting and I had a hard time getting to sleep when I got home. Then I got to go to the Tree Commission. That is the best group on the planet. And we talked about everything from heritage trees to the budget for next year. And there was no spatting over the budget. Everybody agreed on what they wanted. It was great. We talked about what seedlings we were going to put out next year for our Arbor Day. You know, you can get the seedlings at the farmer's market. It's pretty exciting. They didn't talk about the Heritage Park, but I think everybody's still kind of in that. We can't talk about spring until it actually gets closer because we get kind of crabby about it. And then last but not least, today was the Pbac transition subcommittee. So the hiring group for the next executive manager. Right now, what we're doing is finalizing the job description and trying to figure out, because it is a university position, what happens with all the things we want this person to do salary wise, you know, and there is a process within the university that has to go through. And yeah, it was quite a long discussion. And you know, you wonder, because it was a 75% position.
Yeah.
When the past director was there or past manager was there, do we go to a full-time because of all of the stuff coming up? You know, it was just a really good conversation. And it's we have Whitman County and Pullman and Moscow and everybody there committed to the process, but it was a pretty serious decision point. So I don't really have any update on that, except that we'll have another meeting here in about a week to go through it again. So that's all I have.
Haley?
So I am our planning and zoning liaison, and I'll give my January 12th notes as well, since I was stuck in an airport at the last city council meeting and wasn't able to share. It's been really cool to watch the planning and zoning conversations. It's been kind of light on some of the action items before them. And so I really, really, really appreciate that our commission members are taking it upon themselves to do some further research and assigned readings and discussion. And so that's been really cool to watch play out. I have no doubt that our planning and zoning folks are making sound decisions and recommendations to council. And so there was a really interesting article about affordable housing that was discussed at the January 12th meeting. Highly recommend watching the recording on YouTube if you want to hear the discussion. And the Pbac conversation is always fantastic. The note that I wanted to highlight, this conversation about our aquifer has been happening since the 60s, and the big reason that the previous attempts to find an alternate water source, the reason it didn't go well was because the public didn't know. And I'm really excited that for whatever we end up deciding to pursue as a community, I don't sense that'll be the conversation. I am excited that people are currently debating what solution is the best solution, not that there isn't a need for one. So that's been, it's always fun to hear from Tyler. one of the other cool kudos things that I wanted to note was that Moscow had one of the first water reclamation systems in the Northwest, which I didn't know, with what we use for brown water, which was gray water, not brown water. So yeah, it was a great conversation. And then I also joined the Farmers Market Commission meeting last week, and I think some of that will come before council, but it was a really good conversation to observe about how to design guidance for and requirements for aerial distance for vendors and things like that, and how to make sure that we're really focusing on meeting the mission that we set forth for farmers market. So that's what I got. It's good stuff.
And
I have some Parks and Rec updates. I went to my first meeting. So let's see. I have a non-pandemic public health update, which is fun. They're going to be taking surveys at some parks in town, and they're available online as well. And they're looking to figure out what people would like to see as far as improvements in our local facilities. And there may be some grant funding eligible for that as well. And then we looked at the Milton Arthur Park playground equipment bids that are now online for public voting through February 18th. And for anyone who doesn't know where that park is, that's the corner of Sutton Street and Granville. And then lastly, they announced the pesticide-free park for this year would be Anderson Frontier Park.
Cool.
Yeah. And that's all I've got.
Julia,
I went to Fair and Affordable Housing, and we discussed the upcoming survey that they've worked really hard on. They'll be sending out 300 surveys to Moscow households to ask about barriers to housing. And so if anybody gets one in the mail, please fill it out and send it back. We talked a lot about, 300 is not a lot of surveys, but we're hoping, I think, to use it as a jumping off point. So we'll get that preliminary data back from a small sample, and then perhaps asked to add a few questions to the city survey in a year. And so that'll help us narrow it down. The Fair and Affordable Housing Group will also be tabling or handing out information at the health fair on March the 10th at, I think, the Latah Fairgrounds. So we look forward to getting more down about different housing options, and they're going to share that table with different groups in Moscow that provide housing. So good.
okay, for my part, so everybody knows, our legislature is in session, and all kinds of festivity is occurring down there underneath the Capitol Dome. Some pertaining to the city, is there are some bills in progress to fix the notorious House Bill 389 from last year, which did interesting things to municipal budgets. But in this case, the clause most likely to go forward seems to be exempting the URA limits from the 8% cap that's present. There's also work still going on to address limitations on the amount cities can charge for new construction to try to offset the cost of extension of services, so that doesn't fall onto the existing residents. So that still needs a bit of a fix. And as everybody knows, income taxes have decreased, and everybody gets a rebate of $75 for, if you paid a lot of money, 12% of your income tax from last time. But overall, from what I've heard, is citizens are more concerned about property tax than they are about income tax. So the legislature still has ways to go there. And it's always tempting to quote Mark Twain at this point, that no man is safe when the legislature is in session. And it's truer now than it was then. Went to the airport board meeting, and things are very close to finishing the necessary funding for the terminal. We're about $366,000 short on that, but it looks promising to be able to cobble together those funds from various other sources. And then it's off to the races with that. They're going to be ordering the start of structural steel, letting bids out later this month to see what we can get for delivery in October, so that when the weather clears up a year from now, they can start construction, finish that thing by December 31st, 2023, so that we can not get in trouble with the feds about not spending their grant monies. So I don't want to give back $42 million to the federal government on this. Let's see, and also, set your channels in punch up your calendars. February 23rd out at the Best Western is the Chamber of Commerce meeting, also State of the City address. So come out and listen to all the good things we've been doing here in the city for the last year.
What time is that, sir?
That's 11:30 in the AM.
Thank you.
So that's it from the mayor. What have we got from staff?
No staff reports this evening.
Wow, sweet. Okay, at that point, I would entertain a motion to adjourn the council meeting, but to re-adjourn into executive session per Idaho Code 74-206, 1F. And the meeting will not re-adjourn at the end of the executive session.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. That's the end of the council meeting. Executive
Honor,
session
Your Honor,
starts.
that has to be roll call vote to go into an executive
Oh,
session.
my goodness. Okay, well, once more into the fray, good friend. Here we go. Haley,
Aye.
Gina,
Aye.
Julia,
Aye.
Ann,
Aye.
Sandra.
Aye.
There we go.
Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification.
Stickler.